Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to this TechStrong Learning Experience brought to you by Modern. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of TechStrong Learning, and we have an exciting program for you today. Before we kick things off, I do have just a couple of housekeeping notes to review. First, today's session is being recorded. If you miss any of our discussion, perhaps you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend. The on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you'd like to engage with us today, you can do so using a couple of features which can be found on the right side of your screen. The first tab you'll notice is the chat tab, and we'd like you to send in any thoughts that you have for us today, and I'd like you to start warming that up for us right now by letting us know from where you're joining. If you look to the right of that chat tab, you'll notice it says Q&A. If you have any specific questions, we'd like you to go ahead and send those questions in there. Just makes it a little bit easier for us to track them. We do have a poll that will be launching on about slide 9 in our program today. So we do want your feedback there. And if you navigate over to the handout section, you'll see there are several resources to download. So feel free to grab those at your own convenience. Of course, before we close out, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around for the duration of our program. So today we are talking about a case study, improving code security with continuous software modernization. And I'm joined by Pat Johnson, head of marketing at Modern, who is going to lead our conversation today. Patricia, do you want to take it from here and introduce the rest of our panel?
Sure thing. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Let's see. Get to our speaker slide. I'm joined today. I'm very happy to be joined today by Jason Simpson, who's VP of Engineering at Choice Hotels, and Stephen Cihak, who's the Senior Director of Cloud Ops at Choice as well. So while it may seem obvious that keeping your software and dependencies up to date makes your software inherently more secure, in practice, this is a really hard thing to achieve. So Choice Hotels has found a solution to this challenge with Modern, and we're really excited to be able to come online with Choice today to talk about their organization and how they're leveraging automated remediation and what it means to their organization. So let's look at the agenda quickly. So today we're going to start out with an introduction to Choice Hotels. Jason's going to share with you some highlights about the technology organization. I'm going to do a brief overview of Modern and what we're all about, just to provide some context of the discussion as well. And then the three of us are just going to get into a conversation and talk a little bit more about the why and the how of automated remediation at Choice. Then Stephen is going to give a demo on the Modern platform and kind of walk you through some of the exciting things they're looking at. We'll do a quick summary and then jump right into questions that you have. So as Cody mentioned, please start populating the Q&A as we go along, and we'll pull out some of those and have time at the end to address your questions. So now I'm going to hand it off to Jason to hear a little more about Choice.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Pat. Appreciate it. Love being here to talk about Choice Hotels and what we're doing in the technology area. So Choice is an 80-year-old company, hospitality. We have 22 brands and over 7,500 hotels globally. We just recently closed on the acquisition of Radisson Hotels Americas Group, which added 9 brands and another 600 hotels to the totals. And like our CEO likes to describe our company as kind of at an intersection of franchising, hospitality, and technology. And so, talking about our technology in general, we're kind of organized in what we like to call a domain model, where our cloud platform essentially sits on the bottom, and then all these business units tied to technology development teams kind of plug into that to be able to deliver value for our guests and our franchisees. Technology team is about 500 associates, 60 teams, and we typically use Java as our core language. We about 85%, I'd say, about 10% Python. We have some other, smaller, languages we use as well. And AWS is our cloud provider. We've been on this cloud journey for a bit here, and we're 80% cloud today. And by the end of 23, we should be done and out of the data center and be 100% running on Amazon. So, to talk about our cloud platform team, we like to refer to it as the tip of the spear, because they're always pushing the boundary and they're looking for new and innovative technology, and that's what Modern brings to the table. And we'll hear more about that in a little bit. So Stephen's team typically will either build or buy different technologies that we can go ahead and leverage for our cloud, and then our domain teams can leverage it from there and hopefully help the developer experience in general. So Pat, you want to keep going?
Sure thing. So let's talk a little bit about Modern. I wanted to start out by setting the stage for what we're all about. Today's modern assembled applications are complex and they're continually shifting from under our feet. So, one data point I've heard is that software is now like 80% open source, 20% third party, 20% proprietary code, and that it's tying together all these 80% of third party code into their business critical applications. So within these assembled apps, though, third party dependencies change and evolve at their own pace. Software vulnerabilities can be unintentionally introduced by anyone at any time, and APIs can be added, deprecated, and deleted along the way. So you have to think of this as a living code base. It's largely outside the control of development teams, a lot of this. So, for example, if an open source maintainer makes an API change, now your organization has to go in and update your applications that are impacted before they break. Another instance is if a security vulnerability is identified in existing code, this can create an all-hands-on-deck situation, pulling resources to patch the riskiest places in the code. So you're likely today using some kind of search and scanning solution to at least know where you have your vulnerabilities or your dependency bumps or compliance issues. But this is difficult for developers to act on because of all the reporting of all the tools, especially as it competes against doing their business value work. So in today's modern apps, maintaining code can become an almost impossible job. There are just too many dependencies, too many vulnerabilities, too many repositories to manage, and it can become an unscalable act for most organizations. So before we get more into the Modern platform, I did want to do the poll right now and ask you, what code maintenance or update activities are most consuming of your developer time today? So let's look at the poll. And it's starting to poll now. So if you can submit there, and we'll run it for a few seconds here to get some data coming in. Da, 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 da. How's it looking? Oh, hold on. All right, here we go. I can see it now. I had to enlarge my screen. Okay, this is it's somewhat evenly spread across these different areas. The two things in the middle, dependency updates and framework migrations, are taking a large percentage of this, but security vulnerability patches are the #1 thing, which I think you'll hear some of this echoed in Stephen and Jason's comments today. That's good to know. So hopefully this webinar will give you some insights into how we can improve that situation, because the good news is that these maintenance and update activities that you're all spending this time on can be automated with Modern. So Modern is a enterprise class automated code remediation platform for patching security vulnerabilities, updating dependencies, migrating frameworks. So unlike your traditional search and scanning tools, though, that can only report on the issues, Modern can make safe, 100% accurate code changes across thousands of repositories without disrupting your developer flow. So let's look a little bit closer at the platform itself. Think of the platform as sitting alongside your software development lifecycle. So they're replacing that manual and tedious work without disturbing any of your DevOps systems today. And how this works is that development teams can examine diffs and issue commits or pull requests that are then reviewed and then just put through your usual CI/CD pipeline. Developers stay in control. That's what's the important thing about this too. And they decide when changes go into production. So let's look at the platform itself and some of the key components. At the base here, we have the open ecosystem called Open Rewrite, and it houses the transformation recipes that you can run. And then the accurate refactoring engine itself runs those recipes. There's a horizontally scalable code warehouse for distributed operations across your code base. And then finally at the top there's a console to manage your auto remediation at scale. So you can have organization views, you can see recommendations, and you can run company-wide change campaigns as well. So Modern works within your development team's priorities and practices to ensure the right changes are done at the right time with the right approvals. But to automatically remediate code with high accuracy at enterprise scale takes some groundbreaking technology that I wanted to share with you. So if you think about scanning technology, it's based on an abstraction or an index of code, but true transformation of software requires the full fidelity of your source code. That's including all dependencies, both direct and transitive at all levels, and things like, as well as type form information and formatting. So the Modern platform uses a new data model called the lossless semantic tree, or LST for short, which is generated at compilation time. And the semantic base data of the LST represents the full fidelity of your source code. And it's characterized by things like type attribution, format preservation, and other metadata that's important when you're analyzing and manipulating your code. So changes can be made to the LST, and then the modified trees can be printed back to source code with formatting in mind. And then another key area here is something we're calling recipes, or the blueprints that drive the code changes. So a recipe can represent a single standalone operation like a simple method rename, or it can be composed of many different recipes, essentially recipes that are chained together. This can enable more complex operations like a framework migration that has many moving parts. So think of Spring Boot 3.0 migration. And this, to migrate to Spring Boot 3.0, it takes Java 17 updates. And then you need to get to Java 17, you might need to upgrade to Java 11 first, and so on and so forth. So it can get pretty complex. But Modern can run these recipes across any number of repositories fast and make consistent, stylistically aligned changes to your source code. This enables you to automatically eradicate vulnerabilities in your code base or upgrade dependencies in a coordinated fashion and really just improve the overall quality of your code. And there's a broad range of open source recipes within the growing Open Rewrite ecosystem, and companies can build their own custom recipes as well. So now that we've shared with you a little bit more about Modern and choice, let's move on to our conversation with Jason and Stephen so that you can see how all this works in practice. Now, I've got a topic slide here just to kind of give you some ideas of the things we're going to be covering, like platform engineering, the challenge of application security, the Modern selection and adoption, and some goals that Choice has for their auto remediation. But we'll see where the conversation takes us. So I wanted to kick it off by asking you all, from your intros, you both have responsibilities for cloud platforms at Choice Hotels, but how do you see code maintenance and security connecting with that role?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I'm glad to be here too. And for that, platform, the team that I run really provides capabilities that are used by engineers. So we're we really go in and say, hey, this utility or this tool or this capability makes sense for us to leverage. How do we make that easy to consume, adopt, and maintain for our development team, so that their experience using that is really good? So part of that is, part of that responsibility is CI/CD and just general deployment and how they interact with our cloud provider, AWS. So in terms of code maintenance and security, how that works, right? As we all know, security is everybody's responsibility at an organization. And part of that means that engineers really have to go in and maintain their code bases and keep them up to date and remediate vulnerabilities. And that is a challenge with current modern architecture. So before, in our legacy world, Jason knows this, we'd have a handful of apps. We'd have a handful of apps, they get deployed 4, 5, 6 times a year. Somebody's got a corporate POM out there or some sort of dependency management tool that's really just manages it. And you only need 1, maybe 2 people that keeps that up to date, and everybody consumes it. So, relatively easy. Well, now those 4 or 5 apps are 400 or 500 apps, and they're all using different dependencies. That they've got different versions all over the place. The corporate POM is a mess, and it takes a team or a village to really kind of keep it up to date, and it's constantly changing. And so, it's really difficult to maintain that and to ensure compliance. It's just way harder. And so, at least in my experience, I haven't seen a good currency strategy. So how do you actually do this on the number of apps that we have with all the number of teams? And so really, we were looking for some way to manage that better. And Modern, we saw it and realized immediately that it could really help do that for us. You can go back to, hey, I only need a few people, central people that drive these currency, the current versions out that people need to use. And it removes a lot of the cruft from the dev teams that have to go in, and on apps that they hardly ever touch, they have to go in and do these PRs and figure out what's up to date and what the latest version is and everything. It's a royal pain, honestly. So this gets rid of a lot of that work for them and can have them focus much more on the business logic. So what I see how this connects to my role is that we want to provide that capability to them to quickly remediate these problems. And so again, didn't know that you could do that automatically. So we were looking at, hey, every April, we're going to have everybody go into all of their applications and update everything, and we're just going to have to allocate a couple people on every team once a year to go do that work. And with Modern, we don't really need to do that anymore. So we could update things every month. We can update things just whenever that need arises, we can go do those changes and keep things up to date and submit PRs and have it go through the normal test and deploy flow very quickly.
I mean, the other big one though is like all the upgrades, right? So it's not just kind of maintaining for security fixes or whatever. It's like, hey, we want to move Java 11 to 17, like you mentioned,
yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of like, how do we go ahead and stay on the latest? I mean, you mentioned currency strategy, Stephen. I don't know that anybody has a good one, right? But now we might be able to implement something that actually, hey, we're N+1 on all these versions, and like much more secure, and we're able to take advantage of all the new capabilities.
Yep, absolutely, totally agree.
Yeah, that's important. But let's look a little bit deeper into the security challenges in particular. So, I know that the Log4j library vulnerability left a lot of organizations exposed. So what impact did that or other security issues have on the organization? Can you share a little bit about that?
That was the December to remember, right? Like, I think that like everybody. It was all hands on deck for I don't know, a month, and we were just constantly having meetings and making sure the code was updated and looking for vulnerabilities. Hey, where do we have log4j deployed? Is it version 2 or is it version 1? Where is it at? I mean, it was heavy lift, and right before the holidays, I think is when it hit.
Yeah.
It was great because the company, rallied, all the developers rallied, and we got it taken care of. But at the same point, like I can't imagine the expense. No one's probably calculated it, but it killed business productivity, delivering value for the business for, like I said, almost a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know we were faster than some companies at being able to respond and do updates, but it still took a ton of people. I remember those meetings where the screen was just littered with everybody's little box, because we had so many people online talking about updates and where they were and what they found, and just trying to organize that we had to pull in some heavy hitters to come in and help just organize the darn thing and keep it up to date. So what the ironic part about this is about a month before that, we saw Modern and we got a demo of it. And it's like, I just kept cursing myself that we didn't have that before this, because it could have been, hey, that's okay. We have to update log4j, push of a button, it's updated. We've got PRs everywhere, and all we got to do is deploy. And so what took a week of time in the initial push, we could have done in an afternoon. I mean, it could have been very, very simple. You just do some simple tests, and you're through. So it was really a transformational change to see that. It's just an amazing piece of technology that we could totally leverage for situations like that, where you've got this major thing, we got to rally everybody. Hey, we can pull in this tool and save oodles of time and really close those risks immediately.
Yeah, I remember, Stephen, you were talking about when you first encountered Modern, but it seemed like magic to you. Can you talk a little bit more about that and kind of your first reaction?
Yes. So first, that the lossless semantic tree, it's an amazing feat of engineering. It really is. And to me, that's all magic. That's way beyond my knowledge and ability to do. But it's super hard to believe it actually does what it does. So Jason and I both have written code, and I'm still writing it. Jason kind of looks at it every now and then. But we do little things differently, and everybody does. Where the curly braces are and that kind of religious argument. And so this tool actually maintains that formatting that is unique to you. And I just find that incredible that it's able to do that when it's, adding lines of code into your system and removing others. It still makes it look like you wrote it. So that to me is a piece of it. It really, in many ways, is magic. I know it's not, right? It's engineering, but it's not an area of engineering that I ever took up. So it is pretty incredible.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I do see this as very transformational for developers. So, like we've talked about this, we've said this several times, but just keeping things current is a challenge. It always is. You're always, there's so many demands on engineers to go out and build the new thing and update that capability and leverage some new tech. And there's never enough time in the day for you to go back through and say, hey, I've got to move from, Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3, or from Java 8 to 17. And so it ends up being that all of this, quote unquote, technical debt builds up over time. And then somebody has a bright idea that says, hey, you know what, we've got to get there. And so we're going to take everybody and we're just going to work on this. And we're going to stop all business productivity for a long period of time to get this work done. or we're going to remove capacity out of our build teams to go and do this work for everybody. And
yeah, I mean, it's super reactive, right?
Yeah.
There's no proactivity whatsoever.
So absolutely. And so what we're trying to do is figure out, well, how do we stay ahead of that? And how do we make it small and easy incremental steps, or use an auto remediation tool to get us to that next level and keep us current? And we're not constantly, having people say, well, we can't do that yet because we have to go upgrade this. And we can't do that yet because we have to go upgrade that. Mm-hmm. It's a pain. And then the other thing from a platform standpoint is the more standardized systems we have, the way better our stuff works, right? We can remove a lot of cyclomatic complexity in the code that we write because we don't have to build for all these edge cases anymore. Yeah. And so, being able to take something that says, hey, we've got 3 different metric exporters here in the company, and we just introduced a 4th. And so getting everybody onto the latest version of the things that we need to get them on is going to be significantly helpful to us as a platform team. We're going to be able to write those recipes to get off of our custom libraries that we've wrapped these standard libraries around and get us onto the right platform. And then we can remove that we don't need anymore to really simplify our platform and make it easier for us to maintain long term.
Can you talk a little bit about your adoption of the platform itself? Because I know that there's kind of maybe a little bit, developers can be a little unnerved by the idea of automated changes hitting the queue. And also, trusting that change, but also the amount of, when you start automating a function like this, you could have a lot of PRs, submitted. So how are you working through that process of onboarding Modern with your organization, or how have you worked through it?
Yeah, so what we've done is we started really simple. Just look at the third-party vulnerabilities we want to go tackle. Upgrade to the latest patch version of those libraries that have those vulnerabilities. That's super straightforward, right? You're just going out and updating a POM file with a different version. Maybe breaking breaking out and from the corporate POM from all of the inherited dependencies, so that the app can be much more standalone. So those are very simple things to start with, and they're not, they don't make the developer as nervy about it, honestly. And we've seen some good things with that. We've also introduced the common static analysis. I'll show some demos of that later. So it really allows them to take all of the scores we get from security on our apps about, hey, you have, the vulnerability scores and the all the coding practice scores, all the static analysis issues that pop up there. It's really helping drive those scores down on the teams that have started with this. And so we've done like this very iterative, slow, more grassroots rollout, as opposed to coming in and saying, you must use this. Mm-hmm. And we're getting a lot more adoption from that. So just the word of mouth, hey, I got all my stuff done in an hour and I'm done. And these other guys are sitting there and they're pulling up all of their apps, and it's taking them, 3-4 days, and it's painful. And so just that kind of word of mouth is how we're helping drive the adoption of this. And really, we're evangelizing it as well. We're talking to people and saying, hey, have you seen that?
Yeah. It's almost like you have to see it to believe it too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, we take those crawl, walk around approaches to a lot of things, and you even have to do it with developers sometimes, right? So, hey, try this out. Why don't you see what you can do? Fix some vulnerabilities. And then they see that, and then they can do more and more and more. And then, one day we're going to be able to make a lot of massive changes that are necessary to kind of push the platform forward.
Yeah. So a
Awesome.
couple other things that have happened is we have a internal conference every year. So we literally let the technology teams take a week of time and listen to conferences and do a hackathon. We call it a make-a-thon, but it's a hackathon. And we've had one of the teams actually use the product to get their stuff done faster. So they were able to kind of leapfrog a couple other pieces just because they were able to use auto remediation to fix a whole bunch of stuff. And they're able to get that out into production at the end of the day sooner because they cleared all the vulnerabilities up and all the static analysis issues from them writing code at 2 a.m. So that was pretty cool. And then we also have a desire to get on Java 17. And so people are starting to look at these recipes, which are really, it's the rules that govern how you move from point A to point B in Modern. And so we'll get a demo of what some of those are soon. But we're using this platform to say, hey, is this a way for us to get our code updated so we can run on Java 17 very quickly. And then we can look at what are some of the things in Java 17 that we really want to leverage and maybe transform our code, and then look at, hey, can we write recipes for this? Can we just change this out of the box?
Yeah. Great. So just let's round out the conversation here with, are there just some key goals that you all are looking to, either short-term or longer term, that you just want to summarize a little bit here for us?
I mean, the security stuff right off the top, right, Stephen? Like we want to get rid of the vulnerabilities and all these transitive dependencies that have vulnerabilities, not just the critical ones. Sure, this tool is going to super help when one of those critical ones pops and we all need to jump. But it would be great to start moving down that stack and getting rid of those mediums and those, the easy ones, because today the hackers chain all that stuff together and then they cause, damage. So the point is, like, we need to remove those, and we're not necessarily, able to do that without something like Modern.
Yeah. And so that's definitely the primary goal to start with. It's a simple goal. It's easy. It's not as code invasive, and it's not as worrisome for the developers. It also, will allow us to run into, hey, I just created, 200 PRs in the space of an hour. What does that mean for our tech leads that have to review everything? and how do we scale that? How do we handle those floods of PRs? There's people that are freaked out by that. I think it's amazing that we can just spin up, hundreds of PRs in a very short period of time. I think it's great. But it's a way for us to say, hey, we need to focus on the things that are important, and some of these things we can probably start looking at and say, hey, these are simple changes. We use the auto remediation framework. Maybe we do more of a CI approach to this and allow for automatic merging or committing directly to the mainline branch on some of these changes. But to go back to some of the goals, I think, vulnerability counts number one, but we also want to move to that consistency across the org in terms of the libraries and the versions that we're using, especially around our observability tooling. And then simply trying to simplify how we remain current and up to date and on our standard. I really see this as a way to reduce the time needed by developers to do that work. And so they can focus on the business initiatives as opposed to spending days of time on every cycle to just deal with figuring out, vulnerability stuff, simple stuff.
And things that are very repetitive and can actually, automation's like the perfect solution for a lot of these things. Yeah. That's really great. Thanks for sharing your experiences so far here. And I think let's just dive into the demo and show off a little bit what we've been talking about. I know that Stephen's going to walk through some of the areas and highlight some of the areas that, y'all have been looking at and starting to use the tool for. And I just wanted to mention up front too, that you're using our public tenant, which is public.modern.io, for obvious reasons. You can't show your code in public, and that's great. The public Modern instance is actually running on thousands of repositories of open source code. So, any changes you make here actually serve the greater good of open source as well. So,
yep, absolutely. So, one of the first things that we did was actually jump in, and I'm just going to use all these recent searches, is the dependency vulnerabilities. So this is where we're really starting with our stuff anyway. And this is super simple, right? There's hundreds of recipes out there. And what this is doing is actually going through and saying, hey, if you've got a CVE, this is a version you're using, this is the version you want to move to. And it's moving to the least impactful change. So what's the minimum version I need to move to in order to get rid of that vulnerability or get rid of vulnerabilities? So this is going to run against, 146 different repositories. It doesn't take very long at all to get done. It's still running, so don't worry. You can see it's already hit, over 2,000 files. But you can run multiple at the same time. So we'll let this kind of spin in the background and we'll come back to it. Some of the other ones that we're really starting with are the common static analysis. And you can see these are all these recipes that kind of talk about, hey, making sure that if your class is serializable, you've got a serial version UID on it. So all these things that are out here, and you can decide, hey, I don't want my packages all in lowercase, but even though you should do that. So you can decide, I'm not going to use all of these analysis items, but you can at the same time. So let's just kind of throw them all out there and we'll run that one too. So some of the other ones that we've been looking at are moving to Java 17. So we look at the migrate to Java 17. You need to migrate to Java 11 first. So, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. I'll dig into that in a sec. But you can see 11 to 17 isn't that bad, but we've got to migrate to 11 first. So they chain these together and they say, okay, first thing, migrate your code base to 11, and then do these other things to update to 17, and then we're good. We can run on Java 17. But if you jump into this particular recipe, this is also full of recipes. And there's a lot of stuff you have to do around this. So similarly, God, that's a hard word. So if we wanted to move to Spring Boot 3, one, that requires 17, but then you also have to upgrade from 2 to 3. And so it's got all this stuff in here for you. All these recipes are there for us to just go and say, hey, let's get up to current, and then let's play with the new current stuff. It's significantly better. It's going to be able to move your code forward. Even, we've still got log4j1 in some places, along with log4j2. Well, hey, I could move to log4j2. I can move all that stuff up to the latest, or I could get off of log4j completely and say, it's still too risky for me. I want to get on logback, or I want to move to SLF4j. So all of that stuff, you can do, and there's so many more in here. There's things for Kubernetes, XML files, YAML files, just Maven, which is all about kind of the dependency management and the building. So there's even some Python and Groovy things in here. So, and there's more that seem to be added all the time. They're just coming in because it's the people that write these platforms. It behooves them to do these things because it keeps you on them, as opposed to, hey, it's really hard to upgrade to Spring Boot 3. Let's just not do that anymore. Let's just go rewrite that little app in something else that's a little more standard inside our organization and get off of that platform completely. So they want you to stay on their platform, and they're going to continue to make it easy to move up. Okay, so if we go into the recipes, let's look at this one and see what we got. Okay, so one of them came back, and we'll just take a quick look at it. See, hey, there's a vulnerability in Jettison. It's going from 151 to 152. That's great. Really super simple, right? But if you've got that CVE, you got to go find out, am I using that? Where am I using that? Where is it in the POM? What version do I need to go to? All that stuff your developers got to figure out. And in this case, you don't need to anymore. They also have a thing that's relatively new called data tables. So this goes through and shows you the vulnerability report. So it shows you that Jettison needs to move from has this CVE, this particular CVE, it needs to move from 151 to 152, but lists everything that it's checking. And then you've got some recipe performance and and a little more detail on the source files and what's going on there. So you can use that information as a kind of action report to say, hey, this is what we're cleaning up and this is what we expect to see. And also just to look at, well, what version are they recommending I go to? So it's some pretty good detail on there that you can download and take a look at. So anything else, Pat or Jason, that intrigue you on this?
I mean, one of the questions was, what is the recipe? And you described it, but can you show part of a recipe so people can see it? Or
I can try. We haven't done a lot with the recipes themselves.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So I don't want to mess that up too much. But we can try and take a look here. So if I go into Spring and Spring Boot 3, so you can go into the description. I think
you can see the recipe itself. If you go up, there's the little GitHub icon on the right at the top there. I think that goes to the repository.
Thank you. Yeah. So this will go in and actually say, hey, these are the recipe lists in this recipe, and then potentially we could go in and dig into them. But one thing is, there have been people from Modern that have definitely come in and said, hey, we want to help you write these, and we're going to walk you through how to go about writing your own recipes as you need to. And so that's something we're going to be looking at later this year on how to do that. Once we get this rollout to all of the teams and not the about a third of the teams that have been using this so far.
That's great. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. You can use these open source recipes that are quite extensive and deep as well. And especially, Java ecosystem is where Modern started. So that's right now where a lot of the strength is, but it's growing every day in other languages as well. So we also have an ability to build your own recipes. You can use, there's built a lot of building blocks you can use to create your own recipes for more custom work within your organization, because everybody's going to have a little uniqueness to them. So that's great. All right, let's move on to just kind of wrap up this session and then get into any questions that we have as well. So be sure to be entering your questions if you haven't already done that. But with Modern, you're able to auto remediate your source. This is a unique value proposition. Something cross that any other tool can do today, honestly. So, we're really, hoping that people will go and try this out. Just like Stephen was on the public instance of Modern, you can go to public.modern.io and check it out and play around with the tool. But we also can, come into an organization and quickly, pretty quickly set up a file for you where we can walk through code changes with you, and you can see immediate benefit from using the tool as well. So please give us a call, and we'll be happy to walk you through some of this, and so you can try it out on your own. And let's go over to the questions now. Stephen and Jason, do you have any final thoughts you want to add here?
I mean, I'd give it a try. Like, if you're a developer out there and you're looking at this thing, like, go take a look at it. Like, it's worth your time, right? Because I think it's going to save you a bunch of time. If you're a engineering leader, you're absolutely going to want to look at this. Like, it's just going to help your devs be able to produce more code faster. So,
I really do see this technology as something that's transformational for us in terms of the developer experience. So no one wants to go back in and deal with old stuff and keeping it up to date. It's pain, it's hard. And this can really help you get there so that you don't need to hear, well, we can't do that because we have to upgrade, or we can't do that because of this. This really eliminates that in many, many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yes. One question, we had that poll earlier about what are the what was creating the most work for your developers initially, and can you talk a little bit more about it? Was it security vulnerabilities? Was that the thing? I know you said that creates an all hands on deck situation, but were there other things that are in kind of what percentage of time, or do you have a percentage of time that developers were spending on some of these things?
Yeah, so like I was saying, I think every cycle, teams get those security reports to, hey, you got to go fix all these vulnerabilities. And then sometimes they got to go in and decide, hey, is this real? Is this not real? With a tool like this, you don't need to do that determination anymore. So it eliminates, you can just go fix it. But that is one of the areas that was really challenging for us, because it was hard for us to get the data that says this is directly actionable by your team. So they have to do this research every single sprint to figure out, hey, is this new thing there? Is it not there? So that does suck up a lot of time. And I feel it's a wasted time. It's important for us to do. We have to go do it. But there's better ways for us to go do that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know there was better ways for us to go do that until I saw this tool.
Yeah.
Some of the framework migrations, though, we're still using the metric frameworks from a really long time ago, like from 2015 they built it, and we're still using it, and we've gone on to 3 other versions of it. And that utility was probably built in 2004, and we're still plugging it in. We were still plugging it in places in 2015, and they haven't gotten off of it. And so just being able to modernize the frameworks that we're using and migrate to a single standard is enormous.
And that's great. Well, I think we are, I don't see any more questions here. So unless someone wants to enter one in right now, but I really appreciate the attendance today, and I've truly enjoyed our conversation. And feel free to reach out, and we can have me.
Well, thanks, Pat. I appreciate it. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this. And really looking forward to continued use of this tool and getting wider adoption.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Well, Pat, Stephen, and Jason, thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciated having all of you on TechStrong Learning. And really appreciate not only the demos, but the informative deck and conversation that comes along with it. So thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to take this time to remind everyone that our session was recorded. So should you want to rewatch this, you will be receiving an email with a link to access the recording on demand. You can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and be sure to look in the on-demand section and you'll find it waiting for you. The 4 winners of our $25 Amazon gift card drawing are Danny D, Namita F, James M, and Mauricio M. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Keep an eye on your email inbox to claim your gift card, but if you don't happen to see that email in about the next 48 hours, check your spam folder just in case it gets filtered out. I'd like to thank Modern for sponsoring our program today, and to our attendees, thank you so much for being here live. I really appreciate you spending time with us, and I do just want to ask that you spend one more moment filling out a survey that will pop up as soon as we close out. Otherwise, we do hope to see everyone at a future TechStrong Learning event. Have a great rest of your day, and Jason, Stephen, Pat, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cody. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Cody. Thanks, Pat.